liaison to the Brooklyn Borough President, and I'm also the Women's Health Coordinator. And I just want to welcome you all here to Borough Hall. We're all spread out, and there are little people that are running tardy, but we're just going to get started. So if you all haven't already, please sign in at the front. And there were also index cards, which Shara is coming around with for people that have questions. And you're going to put them in the fishbowl, and we're going to get started with our town hall. We're going to get started with our panel. So for right now, we have our commanding officer from the 7-1 precinct. He's right. I mean 7-7 precinct. No. Excuse me. Sorry.
Community Affairs Officer.
Community Affairs Officer. Sorry. We also have a representative from UNICEF USA, Etienne Palid. We have Reverend Kevin McCall, who is in the back right now. And we also have a representative from Freedom Youth NYC, Monique Riley. So if they can just come up to the front, and they're going to give a brief introduction about who they are, what they do, how they advocate for human trafficking, and then we're going to start with our brief presentation from Monique, and then we will start to do questions. So, if we can start with the Community Affairs Officer at the
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Detective Martinos from the 71st Precinct. I do community affairs. I'm a liaison between the community and the precinct itself. The way I liaison with the youth is through our youth officer, or a lot of times my officers will make arrests, and sometimes they come in contact with females who've been abused or used in certain ways, especially with gang members that is not I don't know words like, yeah. I don't like saying it out in public, but we all know what I'm talking about. So a lot of times when we come in contact with these young children, especially females, we try to think out of the box, and we try to rely on our religious institutions and our strong community members to help us with the females out of the situation. When we come across these females, we really feel that incarceration is not the best solution here for these females. We're just abusing them a second time at this point. So, when these cases cross my desk, we try to make the best to our clergy liaisons and our community members to heal them internally, physically, and to get them back on their feet with society.
Hello, good evening to everyone here tonight. My name is Monique Riley. I am the founder and CEO of Freedom Youth LLC, and thank you, and Freedom Youth Family Justice Center, as well as the Bronx Human Trafficking and Domestic Violence Task Force. We do a lot of work with prevention and awareness with our youth. We want to make sure that we are also opening up to adults who have been involved in domestic violence, human trafficking, and sexual assault. So we provide comprehensive services, support groups, a whole bunch of different, things that we're doing with them. We also have a big part of that is doing outreach, making sure that we are practicing harm reduction. I'm also a survivor of human trafficking. I was 12 years old when I got involved in the lifestyle. I was peer-to-peer recruited by another 13-year-old whose mom was our pimp. And so I always try to tell and make sure that you guys know that these things are happening out here, and it's very, very important that you guys are here today. So thank you so much.
Praise the Lord, everyone.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord, everyone.
Praise the Lord.
That's much better. First, give honor to God, who's the head of my life, not to the pastor of this church, but to the borough president in his absence, and to our dear sister Brianna for hosting this subject, and to my fellow panelists. But I am here not because I'm an expert on human trafficking. I'm here because I care. I'm here because I'm an activist, and I join my efforts of dealing with this issue from my colleague, Monique Riley, who's you just heard to say that she's a survivor and who has been doing this work for a very long time. And I just came to here today to hear and to be able to lend my support and to be able to talk about action. I'm not about words, but it's more of action. and standing up for what's right. And this is an issue that is a crisis. And I run an organization called the Crisis Action Center. Not only is it a local issue crisis, it's a national crisis. And we must be able to be treated as such. Just like they put more emphasis on gun violence and they deal with gun violence as a national issue, well, they need to be able to deal with human trafficking and sex trafficking and prostitution as such. So I'm open to the dialogue and the conversation and looking forward to having some input on what we can do, not just in this month, but after this month is over, to the work that needs to be able to continue. Thank you. Oh, Reverend Kevin McCall, I'm so sorry.
Hi, everybody. My name's Eitan, and I remember the first time I kind of got engaged with anti-trafficking work. I was in college, and my roommate had just come home and said, hey, you want to get involved with this anti-trafficking effort? I figured it was something bad that happened somewhere in the world. I didn't know much about it, and slowly came to learn that it's something that is happening here in our backyards, happening all over the world. And so now I work for UNICEF USA, and so UNICEF is the United Nations Children's Fund. And we work in 190 countries all over the world. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the global perspective of this issue. It's something that's happening here in Brooklyn, throughout the state of New York, throughout the country, and really throughout the world. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the impact that it has on kids. So there's 10 million kids all over the world that are impacted by this issue. And kind of the umbrella that 10 million encompasses is human trafficking, child trafficking, so that's sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and also child marriage, the marriage of kids under the age of 18, which is legal in most states here in the United States. But what kind of unites the issue all over the world is that we need to be taking the same approach to combating it. It's a complex issue. It's not something that we have a quick fix for. And the way that UNICEF approaches it is we have sort of a three-pronged effort that we feel we need to have. So one, we need to be empowering survivors and removing them from the situations when they're trafficked, to providing them with mental health support, making sure they can get back on their feet. The second is we need to be holding traffickers accountable, so make sure that it's something that we're detecting, that folks are, again, being held accountable for it. And then the third one is kind of really where we focus, and it's one of the most important ones, and that's getting at kind of the root cause of why folks are trafficked. And there's two reasons for that. So one is the demand side of it, right? So trafficking ultimately is a business. Around the world, child trafficking generates about $39 billion in revenue. It's billion with a B. That's more than if you took all of the major sports leagues in the United States and added them together, right? It's an incredible amount of money. And so what we need to be doing is combating the demand for it, right?
Yes.
We need to be combating the demand for people who are buying commercial sex, which is really mostly men, right? It's most buyers are men, but most men don't buy, right? So it's about changing the culture, those of us that don't do it. And so that's sort of the demand side is one way to get at the root cause. And the second is at plugging the underlying vulnerabilities that make someone susceptible to trafficking. So it's not so much this, like this movie Taken, right, where someone is kidnapped, thrown in the back of the van, though that does happen. It's more that someone is preyed upon because they lack access to housing. They lack access to emotional support, to food, to shelter, as I mentioned. And so kind of with that effort, whether we're in Kenya, in the United States, in Honduras, we need to be taking that same approach to this issue. And then before I finish, I just want to thank Brianna for organizing, thanks to the host, and thanks to the panelists. It's an honor to be here alongside you.
So thank you to all of our panelists. Right now, we're just gonna have Monique come up and do a brief introduction and give an overview of human trafficking, what it looks like, and what her organization does, and then we will get into the questions that you all so gratefully put into the fishbowl.
Thank you. All right. I'm so thankful to be standing before you today as a survivor of human trafficking and someone that had been deeply impacted by human trafficking, and also as a professional standing on the front lines to assist in the eradication of human trafficking. In New York, at the age of 12 years old, I was peer-to-peer recruited within the DOE, and the form of trafficking that I was trafficked or was tricked into was a coercion into sex trafficking. I was lured to a stranger's home and I was brutally raped. The very person that I thought was my friend was the very person that was grooming me for something more horrific, and that was to become a sex slave. I know that you're thinking, how could that happen, especially with someone as young, to get you involved in those type of things. But I want to just go back to some of the things that I was going through as a child. I think that's what matters. I was quiet, I was shy, I didn't fit in, I didn't have friends, I was bullied. All of these things. I was coming from a broken home, a single mother home of 7 children. We were back in and out of the shelter system. My mom was struggling to make ends meet, working all types of hours to make sure that ends were met. And we were left in the care of my older sister who, watched over us. In this case, there was a lot of instances where I felt like I didn't have any support, This young lady who was 13 years old took her 3 months to groom me. 3 months. Sometimes it can take a day, it could take a year, 6 months, but it took 3 months. It started out with her asking me, to be her friend. And then the next part of that was hang out with me. You don't have cool enough clothing. I need you to come hang out with me after school. It's whack to be a virgin. She just knew these are some of the issues that I was having. My mom couldn't afford the Timberlands, so she brought me Timberlands. Oftentimes teased behind that. One of the biggest things that I want to talk about the way that she had groomed me and brought me in was she had asked me to go with her to a John's house. And I went with her, knowing that I was going to do something to get something. But I didn't think it was going to be sex. I didn't think I was going to get raped. I didn't think that she was a part of the plan. I had no idea that her mother was her pimp before she became mine. So that's one of the things, some of the things that was going on in my life. The first day that we went, she said, I need you to take off your clothes, and all you have to do is dance. And when I got to the house, I said, I don't think I could do this. And she said, well, I need you to do this because we need the money, right? And I remember her mentioning something about nails, and you want the new sneakers and this, that, and the third. And those are some of the small things that was so important to me as a teenager. And when we got to the door, I said, I can't do it. And she said, you got to do it. We're here. And we got to the door, and the guy opened the door, and she shot right to the back. Like, there was no, is there a bathroom I can go to? There was no meet and greet. It's almost like she's been there before. I was told to go to the living room and follow the gentleman, and I did that. In my time spending there, it was difficult because I knew that I was doing something wrong, but at the time, I had a scholarship in dance. I knew dance very well. And he gave me something to drink. And after he gave me something to drink, I began to feel a little bit at ease. She never came out the bathroom. And he demanded me to take off my clothes. His whole mood changed. Took off my clothes. And 1, 2, 3, it was rape. I screamed, I yelled. And when it was all done, he threw $300 on me and told me I can get up and leave. And my friend came out the bathroom. And she was never undressed. She still had her coat on. And we left. She asked me for money. And I gave her the money. A couple of days after that, I couldn't hold it anymore, and I spoke to someone that was going to be willing and able to support me in this. They called ACS. All of the procedures was met. Called the detective, called my mom. My mom was highly disappointed, had no idea what I was doing the whole entire time. It's difficult. When the detective arrived to my home, I was treated as a suspect. He said I wanted this, and I knew what I was going up there for. There was no need for me to give any more information because I closed back up. This was his moment, his chance to open me up and to help me, to build me back up, and he missed it. In that process, my mom was not allowed in the room with me. It was just a gentleman in my room while I sat on my bed. The most uncomfortable feeling you can never feel. I was removed from my mom's home, placed in the lighthouse by ACS. My mom was arrested for neglect. My house was broken. I AWOL'd at some point from the place they placed me at. And where did I go? I returned back home, well, not home, but to the young lady's house who first put me out there, because I knew that that's all that I knew at that point, and I couldn't go back home because I was going to make sure that my mom got rearrested if I did. I stayed on the street for a little while, and I began to survive sex. And we call that survival sex. Because it was the only thing that I knew how to do. I was too young to work. There wasn't a lot of opportunities for me, and I just went back to it. What it did was create a vicious cycle in my life. Because when I got out and I went to Miami, I tried so hard to do well in school. I made it and I accomplished something, which was to get out of special ed, and I did that. But any time that there was a need, my mind went back to it. I don't have to I don't have to do the, come work at this job. I don't have to be here. I can go make money, and I'll make it quick, and I'll just be fine. Because that's the cycle that happens with those who are involved in this lifestyle. They don't want to do it. Most people don't want to do this work at all. They don't want to be a part of this. They don't want to be a part of this. It's just some people are surviving sex. You have others who are being coerced, caged, drugged, and that's because, there's not enough support out here. There's not enough awareness being spread. There's not enough of anything happening. Most victims have to go from place to place to receive services. That is a problem. It should be a hub where they can get everything in one space. There's, just as they have created when people who have had HIV, what they created was, a system where they wouldn't have to have trouble looking for housing, right? A lot of people that I run into every day, that are out there putting themselves out there, are surviving sex. And they're doing that because their bills are too high. I ran into children, who are 14, 15, living a life because they got kicked out or because they are of the LGBTQI community and they're rejected. And so they get involved in this stuff or someone pushes them into this lifestyle. The last thing that I would say right now is that there is a strong need right now for action. We can't wait no more. Our children can't wait no more, and I have not waited anymore because I've told my story. The shame is behind me. I'm out for saving lives, and that's what I want to do. I don't want us to sit back and hear this today and just leave. Take this message, teach somebody else, go into the communities, talk to your youth about it, talk to those who are more lucrative to the pimps, because most time it's not the older people, They're after our children. The younger they are, the better. And that's what they want. And so we have to be able to be agents, change agents, and make that difference in these children's lives. I believe that at this moment there is a strong need for organizations to be stationed in schools that deal with human trafficking. I believe there's a strong need for the DOE to now open up their doors and say, you know what, we are not going to vet curriculum. We're not going to wait one more year to vet curriculum. But what we are going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to get some stuff in there, some curriculum, and it's going to be mandated for our children, not just our teachers and educators, because our children are walking blindly in communities where it is high risk. A lot of people don't want to talk about where the red tape is, but we have to. We know that Brooklyn right now is number 3 for human trafficking. Staten Island is number 1. Number 2 is Queens. The Bronx is number 4, and Manhattan is number 5. This is real. And this work is hard, and it's not easy. A lot of the things that we have to deal with, sometimes we don't even have the conversation to deal with it, but we try, because it's all we can do. So I'm asking everybody to please do not just take this message tonight from myself and just keep it here. We gotta take it and share it and do something about it. It's time for action.
So we also have another special guest, our council member, Farrah Lewis. So she's just going to come up and say a few words as well.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know it's Friday. I know there's great music downstairs and there's other things that we all could have been doing tonight, but you're here. So I just want to thank you all for being here. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here, for supporting this effort and this narrative. I see some advocates in the room that I've been speaking to about this particular issue, and I'm very happy to see you all participating this evening. I want to thank the Borough President for organizing this really, really important conversation. I want to thank Brianna for organizing and helping her office put it together. My name is Councilmember Farrah Lewis. For those of you that don't know me, I cover the 45th Council District in Brooklyn, which is Flatbush, East Flatbush, Flatlands, Midwood, a little bit of Marine Park. And I'm here tonight because human trafficking, sex trafficking is this new conversation that comes up all the time, but it's always been around. For those of you that know, and as the young lady eloquently mentioned earlier, number 2 is Brooklyn is the second borough that's dealing with sex and human trafficking. And I got into office late last year. I had to run 3 times, got into office late last year, and I constantly get contacted by parents who are looking for their missing daughters. Whether their daughters are 13 or 24, they're always emailing the office, calling us, whether they live in Bay Ridge or in Harlem or right in East New York, they're contacting me. And I've always been trying to look for a solution. So I'm happy that I've met some organizations that's already doing the work. I'm happy to see that the DA created a task force to put some things together. I know, Kevin McCall, I see that you've been doing some work in East New York as well. And I'm just happy that not only are we having the conversation, but action is starting. And my hope is that tonight's conversation will lead to even more action, particularly in Brooklyn, because that's where we are, right? And we really, really need to get a hold on how to tackle this issue, how to save our young women, no matter what the age is. We need to ensure that the safety of women is the first priority. And me being a young girl who was sexually abused as a young girl, many of times I ran away from home. And I'm just grateful not one time I encountered a pimp. I encountered someone that decided to kidnap me. I grew up in East New York, and I couldn't deal with the issue of being a daughter of immigrants. It was very hard for me because speaking a second language and having to always translate to your parents, and they have their way of doing things, and then you want to have your way of doing things as an American, it's very difficult. But that's my story. That's not everybody else's story. But I could tell you, as a young kid, I ended up encountering sexual abuse because I put myself out there and my parents didn't know how to control me. And I just hope tonight's conversation is a way for us to really get this narrative started and pushed out in different neighborhoods, that we really need to tackle this issue. So I thank you all for being here. Thank you again, Brianna, for putting this together, the Borough President and the Deputy Borough President, and look forward to talking to all of you. Thank you.
So thank you all for putting your questions in the bowl. We're going to get started with the questions, and these are open-ended. They are for everyone in the room, also for our panelists. What I would say, just to make things orderly, once I ask the question, we would allow the panelists to give their feedback, and then if someone else has a point, they can raise their hand. If they want to share an experience or something else, we can do that. So, the first question is, how long has human trafficking been happening? And we can start from Aton and then move down the line, okay?
Well, the short answer is as long as there have been humans around. I mean, forever. It's not a new issue. What's new about it is the efforts to detect it, to define it, to make it illegal, to hold people accountable for it. That's what's new, which is part of why every year the numbers keep getting higher and higher. And what's hard to tell is okay, we're just starting to be able to detect it. Is it because we're just barely scratching the surface and just learning how to detect it, or because it's actually going up? We're unsure. And so as I mentioned before, I think the important thing is just to get at those root causes underlying why it's happening, the demand for it, and what's making people vulnerable.
There's a simple answer. What people don't realize and know that this month, even though we're at the last day, this is National Slavery Month as well. And it's interesting that they connect slavery to human trafficking. So this has been around forever, before your ancestors. This has been around. We was raped, we was tortured, we was given to individuals that we don't know who we were connected to. This has been an epidemic in our problem, to not just to African Americans, but to the white elites that is still. One of the things that you hear constantly, and I'm not going to get too political, but one of the things that you hear constantly is our president, who has no respect for women, who encouraged the white elites to do things and to be able to do that. What people don't know is that Super Bowl Sunday is the highest, one of the highest days of human sex trafficking and prostitution in this country. So we have to be able to be understanding about what's going on. So when we talk about how long it's been, we need to have the discussion, just how can we stop it?
Absolutely. Oh, you had a question?
Wait, I can give you a mic. Oh.
Hi, my name's Emerald Green, and I'd like to ask, what's the first one if the Super Bowl is the second one?
What's the first one? I don't know that question, beloved.
She wants to know what's the first
What's the
one,
second one?
the second one for human trafficking.
First one is Super Bowl. I don't know the second one in terms of the issue.
I mean, pretty much, it's modern day slavery. And, it happens at any point, to be quite honest. But what makes it so big on that day is that that's where the money is. Pimps and traffickers go where the money is, which is why Brooklyn has become such a hot spot, because it's gentrification that's taking place.
Say it.
They go where the money is, and we are trained. They train the individuals to go where the money is. That's all
And I
wanna
would
say.
just
I don't
add
wanna give
where the
too
men
much
are,
away.
right? It's not just the money, it's where the men are
Yeah.
with the disposable income. The problem is that the demand is so much higher for commercial sex than the people willing to enter it,
Yes.
on their own accord, and that gap is filled by people who are trafficked.
So I just add something here. Back when I was growing up, human sex trafficking, we always looked at 42nd Street and streetwalkers and stuff like that. Now, you don't see that no more. That's been departmentalized. What we see now, and something we see changing, and we're trying to combat that, the FBI, police department, is becoming a backdoor game with
Yeah.
us. It's a lot of Instagram, Snapchat,
Yes.
Facebook, over the computer, Craigslist, back page stuff, and we need to find this stuff, stamp it out, and a lot of information we get is from the community. So we necessarily gonna find this stuff, because you can only imagine how big the internet is.
Right.
So all information we get that we make arrests and close these places down come from the community. 2 instances I've personally dealt with. I'm from Prospect Park, Lefferts Gardens, Crown Heights. We had a female call me up. I went over her house. She says, I don't know what's going on next door. There's a lot of trafficking going on, a lot of mail coming in and out of the place. There's 2 females live there, and one guy always comes
Yep.
every night. We went back to the precinct. We found the place on Craigslist. We called our vice team in. Our vice team closed the place down 2 or 3 weeks later. Second one, we arrested a female who was in our cells. Maybe I'll talk about a story later about her, but she was stealing Similac for a baby. And we decided that going to jail was not probably the best option for this woman, where her pure crime was to feed a child. After we spoke to her and debriefed her, she was basically brought into the sex trade by dating a gang member who was then incarcerated, and he was no longer her girl, but she belonged to the gang, so they decided pimping her out. You know, she had birth of a child. She got, unfortunately, syphilis and AIDS, and at that point, she was useless to the gang. They threw her to the street. So, but this is unfortunately, well, this is one of the better stories, because when she entered our system, we were made aware of it by the patrol cops who did arrest her, that she was arrested with Similac, and we actually released her from the station house, and the deal was with us, because my CO, Jack Lewis, is a very, very understanding person, was she had to go see Reverend Ambrose at a church, because First the Healing had to start inside, and she had to go see Mr. Richard Green. I don't know if I remember who Mr. Green is, who was able to get her a job.
That's good.
Fast forward 3 years later, I ran into her during Juve, totally different person. Happy, smiling, never know where she came from. But this is one in a million stories.
Right.
This is only one story because we were made aware of the situation and we were able to help. There are a lot of situations where people go through the system and they don't talk to us, and we just can't help them. So, you know, but going back to the original thing, it's changing. Instagram, Snapchat, you have children. Well, my kids' friends are my friends. I need to know what's
There you
going
go.
on. You need, you know, this is a current argument with my wife. I love her to death. I tell her all the time, I am not my kid's friend. I am here to make sure my kids are safe. So I will check their Snapchat. I will have the same friends, right? I will drive by that party they're going to. You know, unfortunately, I have that ability. A lot of these kids fall in the trap, unfortunately, like her, where mommy's working that job and she can't be there.
Yeah.
This is who they prey on.
Yeah.
People who are a little bit different, don't have the friends, don't have the cool stuff. This is the perfect storm for them.
Yes.
This is who they want. They're not gonna get the girl who's popular and has got friends at school, or from the family where mom and dad, you know, is on top of things. They're gonna come after children who are not that fortunate as everybody else.
Right.
Who have the single, you know, the broken house, you know, who can't afford things. You know, who has the mom working 14, 15, 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. She can't stay on top of this stuff. And that's what they prey upon.
Right.
And that's the part of the community we gotta try to protect.
Right. And then I just wanted to add to that, because you're absolutely right. One of the new things that we're finding through surveys and asking these questions to the youth as well as parents is that it's happening in our schools. That is the #1 space right now. So when we're thinking, we all think that it's happening, I'm snatching you. It's not happening that way. It's through coercion and tricking. We had a young lady come from Brooklyn who was lured with her friend to a place in Connecticut. This young lady was, she ran into a brothel, that's what they went into, and there were 50 men waiting on the other end of her, and she had no idea. Right from Brooklyn, they found her and brought her back home. So this is something that is not happening the way that we think it is. It's changed. It's changing, and pimps are getting more trickier and more, you know, savvy with things. We were able to see a couple of them hanging out in libraries. They hang out where you are not as parents. You know, when you think about sending your child to the library, what do we think? You go to the library, you'll be fine because there's a security guard in there. You go there because, you know, there's staff inside there. You'll be fine. You're safe. They're not. They're not.
So, sorry, just as housekeeping rules, if you have a question at the end of the panelist speaking, you can go up to that mic right there. It's a wireless mic. If you need to adjust, please do.
Question, do you guys hold any events to talk about this?
Do we what?
Do you guys hold any events to talk about this? Like, does the police department, the 71st Precinct, do anything to talk about this? And the organization you three nice people are from, do you guys hold any events for talking about human trafficking too?
The long and short of the police department is we have community council meetings every month, once a month. So we have community council meetings once a month, and the people who attend the meetings ask questions, and based on those questions are based on the speakers we bring to our meetings to inform the public. So unfortunately, this is not a topic that comes up a great deal. And probably the reason why it does not come up a great deal is because this is a backdoor topic that makes people uncomfortable to talk about, and also it's done behind closed doors. However, if one of the guests would like to come speak at a community council meeting, we always open door invitation for anybody to speak up on these topics.
Yes, and in my organization, we do workshops. We go into schools and offer training to youth as young as 12, as well as to parents and adults, educators. That's a lot.
So my name is Shanice Gatewood Ali. I'm the CEO of We Are Phenomenal Women, and we do stuff with domestic violence. We more of a preventive side. So I'm curious. We live in Harlem, and we came out to Brooklyn because wherever the knowledge is, I'm going to be. So with that being said, I had to come out. However, it's sad in my heart. I wanted to come and give you a hug. These are the things that we talk about. And I hope and pray as we traveled, I know you won't because I could get the community affairs where I'm at on 35th Street area. If y'all could come out to one of my functions and speak to the parents and children about sex trafficking, because this is very important between domestic violence, sexual trafficking. I also do stuff with mental health. So with that being said, we need to be knowledgeable of what's going on in our surroundings. I remember my daughter's 24 years old right now, and I remember her talking about Johns. So I was like, what the hell you mean Johns?
It's a sign, yeah.
You know, and that started clicking in my head because she was hanging out with some older young lady. She was in her 20s. But she looked like she's 14. She still looked little. And I know she's hanging out with some older young lady, and I was like, okay, remind you she doesn't live in my house. Okay. So when she started talking about Johns, I started questioning, what do you mean Johns? Because Johns is AKA pimps. So she was like, nah, Ma, no. I said, yeah, okay. So she don't say those words to me no more. So I came up here to ask you guys, what are the type of language we need to listen out for?
You said one of them, Johns. They also call them sugar daddies. What are some others? Sugar daddies, Johns. The new word is zaddy. I don't know if you guys heard that. Zaddy is with a Z. That's my zaddy. Yeah. John's pimps, things of that nature. Yeah. Anything that you, yeah.
And the things that you really have to be able to look for and be very vigilant, not just names, it's just more so your surroundings. If you see a different pattern of things happening in your home or with the ladies around you, because we're living in a time now, we speak in codes, and everybody has a nickname. That's my boo, that's my boo thing, that's my friend, that's my BFF forever. And we have to be able to just be vigilant of what's in our cell phones. Nowadays, these young people, they got all these emojis, and they don't put names, they put the emojis. So you need to go and say, who is this emoji? What does this mean? Why does this mean? Why you got hearts by this name and this number? It ain't me, it ain't your family member, so who is this person? So just be vigilant. And also be vigilant when you put, when the women and young sisters and children are in Ubers and Lyfts. It's very, very important. It's very important. There was a case where a young lady was coming home. She worked for Power 105, and she was just leaving the studio, just being regular day. And come to find out, her Uber driver tried to rape her. And wouldn't let her go from where she was and where she was. She had to scream, and because she screamed, he eventually let her go. But so you have to be careful. Don't trust the app just because you know where the person is going and you wasn't know. You look to make sure that person, you on the phone with them, you're talking to them, and making sure they're getting to their destination safely. Not because the app can show you where they're going and where if they dropped off, but you don't know what happened inside. That's why FaceTime is important. FaceTime your children. If you at work and you just think, oh, this, it's a regular driver. No, you want to make sure, you have to be vigilant more than you ever been in this time. You can't just say, oh, my child is safe because they're at the destination. Because a lot of times, children, they know how we are. We know if you say something, we know you're going to hear our mouths. You know we're going to say something, so you have to be vigilant. And as my mother, you have to have one up on them. Once you have one up on them, then you'll understand. Go to your children's school and speak to their teachers and ask the teachers if their child is doing something different. Who are they hang around with? Because they won't tell you who their friends are. You just know two friends, but their friends have other friends, like it happened to Sister Monique. Their friends has other friends that's involved in other activities that you know nothing about. I mean, when I was growing up, you listened to your child's conversation to make sure they ain't saying, and as soon as you said something inappropriate, you getting off the phone. So we need to go back to those conversations, and this is the reason why that I'm joining on February the 5th at 2 o'clock at Department of Education or the Tweed building to be able to raise our voice, because there must be a curriculum. It doesn't make no sense that in Florida is the only state that made it mandatory for human trafficking to have workshops in the curriculum. It doesn't make no sense that we're supposed to be the New York City and we have all this money and we have all of these resources and we can be able to deal with other stuff, but we won't have this conversation about having a curriculum in schools and having workshops, and make sure you train, just like you guys came out to access what's to know the signs. The teachers need to know the signs. The teachers need to know the signs. The administrator, school safety officers don't know the signs. And they're supposed to be protecting our kids. So this is a conversation that we must have, and we're doing that because it's about action. It's not just about talking, and we can go and have these conversations, but you got to do something. You got to do something. So myself, Fallon George from Freedom Youth LLC, Larry Smith, and Peter Jones, we had a rally at the Brooklyn Bridge a couple of days ago because we shut down traffic. And we stayed in the middle of the street because people thought that we was rallying for the police. I said, no, not this time. We're rallying to stop the inhuman trafficking. And as a man, we have to stand up. As a male, we have to stand up and not be silent for our women are being portrayed in our community. And we cannot be silent. And we put our life on the line, and we got arrested because we want to say that is enough in our city, in our country, to be able to deal with this issue. It doesn't make no sense that our women being tortured right before our eyes, and the mayor and the governor has not done a damn thing about it. Something has to be done, and it has to be done now.
Yeah, that's right.
Just to piggyback on one thing.
Excuse me, hold on. I'm sorry, 1 second. Just in the interest of time, just so that we can get to the other questions, please keep your comments or questions.
Okay, I'm going to make it very brief because he actually started speaking. I work for the DOE, and you struck a nerve. You struck a nerve. Okay, I've only been there 10 years. I'm an occupational therapist.
Praying for you.
2 local schools. We don't know when they leave out, there's a park.
Come on.
Vanderveer Park. We don't know what's going on, who's there. But school safety only controls inside of the school.
Yes.
Me, I live in the area. I walk down. Why is my students down the block, down the alley? But I can't say anything. All I can do is just warn the parents.
Yes, ma'am.
You go in there, please hit them upside the head at the DOE.
Oh, yes.
We're going.
Yeah.
That comes out of the blue sky.
Yeah.
I'm not a teacher, I'm a therapist. because it is there. Both of my schools, it's rough.
What I would say to that is, when I went down to the DOE to discuss this matter with Mr. Kevin Ranks, what he told me was, I would much rather vet your curriculum. But we all know that they have gotten some training in schools, but they still don't know what to look for. They don't know what it looks like, who's involved in it. They're dead signs, you know?
We as employees need to be trained.
Yes.
We just got trained for something I can't even tell you.
Culture
Yeah.
diversity.
But we need to be
Exactly.
trained
Mandated.
first, so we know what to look for.
Absolutely.
And we see it every day, but
Yeah,
I'm finished.
yeah, yep. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to try and keep my comments brief, and I am so glad to be here tonight and to thank our councilwoman and the borough president for bringing us all together. It's a real issue, and I've been involved. I'm Reverend Dr. Cheryl Anthony, and a faith leader in this city, and specifically in this borough and in this building. This is the people's house. So let me tell you, I've been involved with human trafficking for the last 7.5 years, and I stumbled up on it because my granddaughter spent the night with me, and she was on her way to school, and it was during the time when you couldn't take your phone into the school. And so she asked me, Grandma, I need an extra $1. And I'm like, but I know you got your lunch money. What do you need $1 for? I need $1 because I have to pay to keep my phone in a bodega on the corner because we can't take it in school.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And
true.
so that was the first, and so she said, yeah, we have to pay someone to keep it during the day, and then we get it back at the end of the day. And I said, wow, I said, that's something. She said, but Grandma, you know what? There's a girl that comes that hangs around. And I said, what do you mean hangs around? Well, she doesn't have the $1. And so there are some guys who talk to her to say that they'll give her the $1. So now it's like whole world opens up for me. And she said, and so there's this thing that he'll give her the $1 every day, but then on the weekend, she goes with him. I said, okay, so tell me more. So the thing was, they were watching the children, whether they were boys or girls, who didn't have the $1. And so they scoped them out and to target them. And so they'd say to them, I'll take care of your stuff. And then they say, those sneakers, they're not wearing no sneakers anymore. You can get better sneakers. And so with that, they'd say, we'll talk at the end of the week. And they would take these children, and they were children, they were in middle school. They would take these children, call your mother and tell your mother that you're spending the night at your friend's house.
Yep.
And let me tell you, when I was a child, you couldn't go to anybody's house.
Come on, yes.
Tell me about it.
Okay, my mother had to know your mother. Okay, listen. And as you said, some of the parents, okay, were the pimps, which, I mean, I did so much research on this because I was concerned, what is the church going to do?
Talk about
What is the church doing? And so started doing workshops. Where do they recruit them from? They recruit them from the choir.
That's right.
They recruit them from the praise dance team. They recruit them from wherever they can when they see an opening. And so she said, no, they take them for the weekend. So we started saying, well, what could we do? And we got trained to say, you know, when your baby comes home, when she doesn't have to come to you for money for her nails, something's going on.
Something's going on, yeah.
When she's got clothes that you didn't buy, there's something going on. And so therefore, you have to be able to ask the question. And so I just wanted to kind of share that to say, you know, sometimes we're looking in the wrong place. And one of the things that we have to do, we're not their friends, but sometimes we've got to love them into place.
That's right.
Okay, we can't always beat them up. We can't always, you know, because when you establish that loving relationship, they'll tell you things. My granddaughter started telling me about a trap house. And I said, baby, what's a trap house? She said, you know, when people move out of an apartment in public housing, the gangs take over the house. And that's where they bring girls, and you go in on Friday, and you don't leave out until Sunday night, and you are trapped in there. And then I found out that they were doing human trafficking at the field. Assemblywoman Annette Robinson and I used to walk the field at Boys and Girls High, but now that's the pickup spot. And so they pick them. They pick them up from Boys and Girls High and sometimes take them to Coney Island for the day. And they're in a trap house there. So you know what I say tonight? We've got to open up our minds. We've got to open up our hearts. But we've got to open up our spirits.
That's right.
You know, if you are connected spiritually, sometimes you just got a feeling. And you can't let that go by because it can save.
Somebody.
It's gonna save a life. And I'm done.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for organizing this. My eyes were open. My name is Sherilyn Brown. I'm a school counselor at a transfer high school in Red Hook. My eyes were open like 2 years ago. Selena Higgins from ACS gave this powerful presentations, all comprehensive, telling us how to spot the person. It was actually done from a guy who's a pimp, I can't remember his name, how to reel people in and just get them so in love with them. And since then, I brought her to my school to educate the staff. And now, because of what's been in the news, a lot of my students came to me, the girl students, because they see in their community people approaching them. And they said they want to know how they can protect themselves. So I had ECPAT USA, which is it's one of the leading anti-trafficking organizations in the U.S. And they had a youth program, and they're coming to present to the students first with healthy relationships, because that's how they reel them in, and then cover the human trafficking portion in the second one, and then the third one is online safety. So I just remembered what you were saying about Uber. It's just not Uber. One of my friends who's my age, she was so embarrassed, she just shared this year. She was almost abducted in a regular taxi cab. And she was just on her phone, and that's what saved her, because he locked her in the car and took her to a tire place where he put air in the tire, and someone was coming towards her with a knife. Saw her on the phone. She never got off the phone with her friend, and he must have thought she was on the phone with the cops. Anyway, it happens everywhere. It's like they say, they recruit in schools. They even recruit in ACS, where they take the kids to help them. It's everywhere. If you open your eyes, it's there. So I'm just glad this is happening. And what I was really amazed is this is the January, which is the month of anti-slavery, anti-human trafficking. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, come on.
Nothing, no PSAs, nothing to let us know, and it's just everywhere. So I'm just glad this is happening now, and we can just open our eyes and see what's going on, because my students, they tell me. So, thank you.
Sorry, I'm gonna be looking back because my son is there, so to make sure he's not causing any trouble. My name is Sasha. I work at an organization called Womankind. We serve survivors of gender-based violence, domestic violence.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm gonna take this out because I'm taller. So we serve survivors of gender-based violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking. We serve survivors of both sexual, sex, and labor trafficking. So I just want to bring that labor piece in here, because I know we're talking a lot about sex trafficking, but labor trafficking happens too. I want to, actually, one of my many jobs, I'm also a therapist, and I work a lot with teenage girls. And I also want to talk about the foster care system, right? And how it's really not conducive for helping our young people. And, you know, the big bad wolf might be, you know, we're looking for that guy out there that's a little sketchy or might be in a gang. But some of the people recruiting our young people are their own friends, right? Who are just as young as them, look just as innocent as them, you know? Because, you know, it's like, come, I'll teach you how to dress, you know? I'll teach you what to do. You can make some extra money, right? So you can run away and feed yourself, right? Because all you want to do is go back home, but you can't, right? And then on the labor trafficking piece, I want to bring in immigration and how the environment right now and how we treat immigrants in this country is not conducive and is only hurting and making people feel like they have to do certain things in order to survive, right? Actually had a client who came here from Japan, and you know she just really wants to stay in the States and get an education. But you know, she wasn't doing well in school, lost her student visa, and then you know had to get a job, worked off the books, but wasn't making enough money and ended up, someone said, come, my grandfather, you know, he's really sick, you should come work for him, take care of him, and you know, and we'll pay you. She went, she did it, they're like, you could live there, you know. She went there, she lived there, she took care of him, but found out she wasn't getting the money that she's supposed to be getting, right? She didn't make enough money to even feed herself for a week out of the month. So she ended up going on Craigslist, looking for jobs. They said, we're looking for someone to, you know, give a massage. No experience necessary. We'll teach you everything you need to know, you know. Reached out to the person. They said, yeah, you can do that. No experience necessary. And everything spiraled from there, right? So it's not, and she was an adult. She wasn't a child. So it can happen to anyone at any age because your circumstances, when you're trying to survive, you know, it doesn't matter how old you are, how smart you think you are, or what you think you'll never do, right? Things can happen. So thank you so much for hosting this. I think this is amazing to bring awareness.
Also, what we really was talking, had a lot of talk about women, but I also want to focus on young men because the young men are being recruited to become pimps, become Johns, to become into the human trafficking industry, and is no longer standing on the corner selling nickels and dime bags and weed. These young people are into the get money fast syndrome. So they're recruited by older people who was living this lifestyle, who's now somewhat an OG that they look up to, and now they are the ones doing the recruiting for them. So it's not just women, it's also young men that we have to be able to deal with in our community and watch, because, you know, Dr. Cheryl Anthony said something in terms of your spirit don't feel right, but what we also have to be able to do, we have to pray like never before. Because the Bible says that when 2 or 3 are gathered together, that he'll be in the midst. So if we continue to pray, and along with the action, then things begin to change, hearts begin to change. Things can be able to happen once we are all on one accord dealing with this issue.
Sorry, really quickly, I just want to get to some other questions that were put in the fishbowl. I have a question that I think is a little interesting, and it says, does anyone on this panel know about FranklinScandal.com?
No.
Does anyone know, it was my question,
Okay.
know of the FranklinScandal.com?
No, I don't.
This is about all the children that were in Utah, that were in the homes in Utah, who were being prostituted out to the White House. That was, the pages in the White House have also been prostituted out. So if we don't address what's going on in the White House, it's not going to happen here in Brooklyn. And that's why I asked you, had you ever just Googled
I would say that you are absolutely correct. There are a lot of places that is happening that they're supposed to protect us. You know, I remember one of my own stories, if I could share that really quickly, where I was in Miami, and again, going back out for survival sex, and I went with a friend, and we got in a car of a John. The John turned out to be a cop. He had a cop hat in the back, but we didn't really see it until once we were like in the car and driving off. And when we got in there, well, after he was done doing whatever he wanted to do, when it was time to pay, he denied us that and said, we're not paying you guys anything. You want to go to jail? And me being 15 and 16, I didn't want to go to jail, and I didn't know my rights, and I just didn't want to go there. So I got out the car, and so, you know, it's happening everywhere. I mean, I remember cases where it was happening, and you know, with some of the kids who were my peers in ACS. You know, there are lines and lines and lines of pimps outside waiting with bags of candies and chips right around the corner from most of our group homes. You know, and so let's talk about it. Let's talk about when, you know, ACS, you know, at the end kick these kids out, and where are they going to go when they age out? You know, let's talk about all of that. You know, that's the main issue. You know, and if we're not addressing those issues, we're not addressing anything. We're not addressing those who are supposed to protect and serve us, that, you know, are not supposed to do these type of things to us, and not address them first. You know, what was a 15 or a 13-year-old doing inside of a swing bar in New York that still takes place today? You know, what are we doing with fake IDs? You know, and so if we know how to tackle those things, I think that, you know, there'll be a lot, you know, a little bit more things going on.
You kind of just answered the question I was going to ask. No, it's okay. My name is Jenna Calderoni. I do legislation for Councilmember Farrah Lewis. And some of the research that I've done around this, I find that a lot of the statutes and legislation that's passed, you wind up with the survivors being incarcerated because the traffickers and the people that are creating the demand for this, you know, they're elusive, and threatening to arrest them is not going to stop them. Yeah. So I was just wondering if, as an advocate and a survivor, if you had any input as to what sort of statutes, government regulations, and things that you would like to see that would exclusively benefit survivors as opposed to further incarcerating them.
There is one bill that is taking place that is being, I believe, sponsored by Senator Ramos and Salazar. They have a bill that says, you know, they wanted to basically approve that, you know, individuals who wanted to be able to go out and participate in sex work, decriminalize prostitution, which means that basically they would go out and do, you know, they have that choice to go out and do it without being arrested. I have to say that I am very biased about that, and I have to say that, and I don't mean any harm to anyone, but there's a reason why. That's right. We're going to see more peer-to-peer recruitment happening in schools. How many 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and 21-year-olds are in our children's school and high school with 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds who can't find a job, or who did not get selected for an opportunity with SYEP? That is my only issue with it. And we also have learned that through the Nordic model that it didn't go well. It did not do good. You know, there was more harm done. We started to see that there was more cases where ACS, I don't know what they call it back then, you know, over there, but it was ACS in the home. You know, there was parents who had, you know, revolving doors while their children was in there. And so for me, I don't think that it should take place, but if it does, I believe that we should at least consider upping the age to 28, because that's when a child or a person can really think and say, this is what I want to do, without having to be able to worry about the mental illness that's going to come along with it, and they have a sole yes that they want to do this work.
So, before we move on to the next comment from another person, I just have two other questions that I want to get started and shift the conversation a little bit. So two other people in the audience asked, how do you know if someone is being trafficked? And then how do you protect yourself as a woman while you're out and about? And this is open to panelists and also other people in the audience that may have experience or may have comments as well.
For myself, like I said, my mom did not know I was being trafficked at all. One of the dead giveaways that she didn't even notice because she was working so much was money. The phone calls in and out, well, beepers rather, because that's what time I was in, the beeper calls and leaving. And her finding extra money, sometimes there was times when I would feel bad. I knew my mother had to go credit food from the corner store. I would like slip some money in her shoes. She'll find it here, find it there. But one of the dead giveaways is typically the change in behavior. I mean, I went from just being this really quiet, going to church, all the time, young girl, to I don't want to do this no more, nasty attitudes, running away. That was the key. You run away, you get more money. You'll find yourself in Miami in different brothels. So when we think about it, I wanted to address this really quickly, and I don't want to go off onto a tangent, but one of the things that we all have an issue with here, a lot of people do, is we automatically jump to say this child is missing and she's just a runaway. I have to tell you, every time that I ran away, I was out of the state. Every time that I ran away, I was in the brothel. At the age of 13, 14, every time I AWOL'd, I was at a brothel. And so it's so important for us to not just label them as, because they're just as much in danger when they run away. And so it's important for us not to be able to go ahead and just say, well, they're just runaways, because a lot of our elected officials or DA offices, they believe that, this child is a repetitive runaway, and, she's not doing anything, she's just a runaway, she's just going to her friend's house. It's not the case all the time. They're out of the state doing something. We just ran into a young lady who was, two young ladies that was waiting at the bus stop, and I was being honored by the Senator Biaggi. And I came back down, it was like around 5:30 in the evening time, and I got there, and there was two girls. They had no coats on. In Albany. They had no coats on. They had no money. They kept asking repetitively, can I use the phone? Can I use your phone? And I heard their conversation. It was like, well, we came too far to go back now. We're good. They're going to let us get on a bus. Don't worry about it. The whole entire time that they were there, I'm thinking, Monique, don't intervene, because Greyhound has this new rule in play where they'll just go ahead and give a free ticket to runaways. Long story short, I posted what I have heard young girls was talking about on Facebook, because I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, it's right here in my face. I didn't do anything. I felt horrible because after I posted that, someone from Halos had contacted me, and they said, did the individuals look like this? What do you know? The young lady that has been missing for more than 6 months. Do you think that they had a picture up at the bus station that says these are the missing people? Did you think that they would even follow the protocol and call the cops? Because that's a part of the protocol. I eventually called back there and said, there's two young ladies that was sitting there between this hour and this hour, and they said, oh my goodness. And I explained to them what had happened, and they said, ma'am, I have to tell you something. These two young ladies got on the bus that night at 12 a.m., and they took a bus to Rochester. Rochester is one of the hottest spots for human trafficking. And they did not follow protocol. So we are going to be in the process of shutting it down, because you don't get that chance without children.
That's right.
These were not two individuals that had IDs. They were 17 and 15. This is the problem. And so there are some bills. I think one of the young ladies had just asked me, is there some bills out there? There are some bills. There's another bill that's called S3465, and it's presented by Senator Biaggi. And it was to basically go out and say that everyone from DOT, the Department of Transportation, will be trained on what human trafficking is. And why is that important? Because that's what they're using to traffic us. Buses, taxis, all of these places, and it was vetoed. The bill was vetoed.
That's right.
Because it wasn't mandated. But we have to make it mandated, so we are going to go back to the drawing boards, and we are going to fight for that bill, because that bill needs to take place. Because look at what just happened to these two individuals who got on this bus, and now they're released in Rochester somewhere, and God knows what's going to happen. And they've been missing for more than 6 months.
One of the things that the question that she asked in terms of how do you defend yourself, one of the things that has been happening across the city, preferably in Brooklyn, Pastor Charmaine Bird, she has been hosting weekly self-defense classes. I know they're doing another one February 11th in Coney Island, but maybe the borough president can be able to host a self-defense class. Or if you want to be able to get your children active, put them in martial arts. Martial arts is a good sport. I did it when I was a kid. It's really good. for them to be able to help them with discipline. It don't matter if they're a boy or girl, help them with discipline, and it's a start, so they all know what to do if they are. And it's not only just for children, older people too. Older people too can be able to get active and learn how to be able to defend yourself, because they prey on anything and everything nowadays. There's no more the old ladies with the pocketbooks. It's everybody, you know, that they can be able to see as a threat and that they can see that they can be vulnerable to do. So you have to be able to be vigilant. Stop walking in the street with your earphones in your ear.
Yeah, take that out.
Stop walking that. That is the dumbest thing that they have created to be for us to do, is that we walk in the street with ear. If you're going to wear one so you can hear your surroundings, what's going on. Wear one. Don't do that. Stop walking and texting. Watch your surroundings. Stop stopping in the street from when somebody says hello at you. When you say hello and you turn around and brother look good, and you know you got to stop doing that, because you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know how many guys that he's connected to, and it's just a lure. I mean, I saw it on the news a couple of days ago. The same thing is that the lady stopped because the guy said hello. She thought the guy would look good. She went to talk to him, and the guy, 3 other guys come around the corner and snatched her up. So this is something that we have to be vigilant. You can't be silent. You have to be careful for nothing.
Yeah.
And open up your mouth when you, and the best thing that you can do if you ever attack or you think you better attack is scream. Yeah. Because somebody's going to hear something, and somebody's going to do something. Just like they did something to that young man in the Bronx that thought he could take that young lady off the train. And he act like he didn't do nothing, and he tried to act like, what's the name, that it was just a joke, or the girl was in captivity, or she wasn't. She screamed. And somebody saw something, and the streets did what they needed to do with him. So you have to be able to open up your mouth, scream, and the best thing, like Martin Lawrence says, run like hell. That's what you do, scream and run like hell.
We actually also, we live in a technology world, and so a lot of us have cell phones. There are 2 apps that I think that everyone would love. One is called JDO. JDO. Okay, it's a tracking app. It also takes pictures of something that's happening. It'll take a picture really quickly, tell you where it happened at. It'll keep all of that information. The second app is Life 360, especially for your children. And I think another way to prevent it is, you know, some of us parents, we have to like really consider you know, not letting our children walk to school by themselves too. That's a big issue. You know, let's bring back the village. That's right. You know, we can bring back somebody who's actually, you know, in a community that maybe doesn't have a job. Try to get them to like stand out there and, you know, do watch like we used to do back in the day. I think that would be really important to be able to, you know, save our children from being abducted, and also just having second eyes. I know that the police department used to have something like that, where if your child was traveling one way or a certain way. Yes. Do they still have it?
No.
Yeah, okay, they need to bring that back.
Right.
We need to fight for that. What was
It
it
used
called?
to be called Safe Corridors.
So you can explain a little bit?
We actually, okay, so there was 2 parts of the program. We had stores on these corridors where if children were in trouble, they walk into the store and tell the store owner they were in trouble, and because they participate in the program, they call 911. We have certain safe path avenues set up where kids will walk to and from school.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit wrong when I say it doesn't exist no more. It does exist during school hours. It's safe corridors during school hours, but once it gets 6, 7 o'clock at night, they no longer exist. Mostly it's handled by our school teams. So if a store owner wants to join the program, they put a sticker on their door, and when kids go to school, they see a sticker, they know they can go inside and be safe.
I like that. So some initiatives will be really nice to
Right.
have out there.
It's a very common reaction. It's more common, it's not just you, we get that from a lot of people.
I was gonna ask, aren't there like some new things, laws that just passed where we can at least carry, was it stun
Mace.
guns, mace or something?
There are several defensive weapons you can carry. We don't suggest you carry any of them. You know, the end of the day, the most effective tool that personally I see is really yelling, screaming, or playing whistle. You know, when you hear somebody screaming, yelling, everybody looks. You hear whistle blowing, everybody looks. A lot of times, unfortunately, with mace, we see mace being either used improperly or being used against you. The other defensive weapons, by the time you get them, the crime's over. So, you know, you know, he said one thing that's true. A lot of our victims walk in the street have earphones on, and they're not paying attention to the world. You see that a lot. You can stand by any train station, and you'll see person after person after person coming up the train, reconnecting with life as they know it nowadays. Their cell phones, earphones, and they're buried in their phone, and they ain't even paying attention to where they're walking or who they're looking at. That's becoming a major issue with us. A lot, at the end of the day, is just educating people how to make it so safer. Walking, you know, the old saying was, you know, walk lip blocks, walk in groups. Always have somebody know where you're going, you know, to and from. She spoke about 360 life, you know. That's mostly for Android users. If you have an Apple iPhone, I share my location with my kids, and I periodically check on where they are. And the thing is, when I call my kids, I don't call them on the phone, especially if I see a location I'm not familiar with. They're being FaceTimed. You know, so that's something you should think about. For those who don't know who the iPhones, I'm a strict advocate. I pay my kids' phone bill. I bought them their phones. I will have their codes. I will never be locked out of their phones. That's right. So when they go to bed, I will go through everything. So for those who have iPhones and don't know, in your settings, actually you can go into locations, and there is a most visited location, and it'll give you a pin map where your kids have been and where they're traveling to.
Yes.
So you can look that information up. I know, geo mapping.
Yeah, geo mapping.
I know it's a lot, but you know, you take 5 minutes out of your day at night or 5 minutes every other day to look at your kids. You never want to be a parent that says, "Why didn't I?" You know, so little things here and there you do. And I'm a big advocate, especially my kid tonight. She's away in college. At 12:30 tonight, away in college, she will be getting a FaceTime phone call from me.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
so, and I tell my kids all the time, we are a society now who says we blame everybody else. I tell my kids, my own part, the people you stay with, I don't care if you didn't do it and they did it. You're with them, you did it. So,
That's right.
you know,
Greetings to the panel. Greetings to one of our elected officials, Ms. Farah, Councilwoman Farah, and I want to say hi to Judge Wade, who's here, taking it in. You know, it's this issue. We just had a meeting last night with Arch of Justice, and I've heard it a few minutes ago when someone raised the issue about ACS. And this is something that I've been fighting for years. If I open my phone and go to ACS app, because I've been defending a lot of families with ACS. ACS, we have a lot of documents to prove that they're one of the biggest child trafficking agency ever in this world. They're worldwide, trillions of dollars, and they must be shut down. And who are you to tell me that I cannot discipline my child? Or if I yell at my child too hard, they call ACS coming to take my child. ACS has been moving children from good homes and putting them with pedophiles. And this is something that people don't know. Many people don't know these things. And I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. You know, I've seen young women who on the ACS care, who you see them with these bags as if they're going to school, but they have change of clothes inside and they're going to their friend's house. I'm like, young lady, where you going with that big bag? Ain't no books in there. Where you going? Just a few years ago, there was a young lady in Queens, left school, right? And until Uncle Roy, you know Uncle Roy from Pitkin Avenue, he called me, said, Marcus, I know you do investigation work. This family needs your help. They went to the cops and they didn't get no help. I think only you could find this young lady, because brought to my attention several times where I went and found young ladies who were either kidnapped or ran off with their friends and wind up in basements, being run through like a train. And I said to the mother, I said, this young lady didn't run away. I said, but give me 24 hours, I'll find where she at. And I found her. When I told them, I said, we got to check at Brookdale. I think she's going to be heading to Brookdale. They said, how you know? I said, what? I got a call from a friend of mine in Bed-Stuy. He said, the young lady you mentioned to me, I just saw her got in a cab, right? She looked like she was hurt, and she's going to the hospital. They well and brutalized this young lady. We went to Brookdale and retrieved her from Brookdale, took her back to her family. But I'm saying, this issue that we having, right, have to stop. We supposed to do a demonstration against Morgenstein, who's been taking children and giving them to abusers, right? And Judge Morgenstein should not be sitting on the bench. She has a terrible history. And it's sad that we have people who are supposed to be administering the law, right, doing things like this. Last night when you hear those mothers speak, it brings tears to your eyes. It brings tears to your eyes. So we need to do a lot more. We need to take our children back. Take our children back from the system, the way we could raise them, the way we're supposed to, right? And stop letting the system raise our children. This is the only way we're going to stop most of this insidious act that's going on. My mother made 16 children, right? She have 89 grandchildren and about 60 great-grands, and I'm in every one of their lives. Every one, because, and Kevin could tell you, my family, I'm always there, always. And I let them know, no, you're not going to go with this friend. I need to know who you're going with. Their mothers will call me to discipline them. When I show up, oh, uncle, I don't want to hear it. Were you there? Yeah, but no buts, you're grounded. I don't play when it comes to children. If you hurt anybody's children, you hurt me and I'm coming after you. I'll go and sit my butt down in jail and do time for whoever wants to hurt our children. I don't care about it. I don't care. And that's the stand that I took. And I will always take that stand. I stand up for what's right, not what's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Monique, so what you say, do you talk at public schools and elementary schools? Because in the beginning of this event, you said that the younger, the better. So do you talk in elementary schools and public schools, like for, for what? For 10-year-olds and under?
I'm very open to doing it, to speaking to younger kids. We have had younger kids as far as 5 years old that we have talked to, with them being my child, and they are advocates. And they are advocates. They go out and do the work. They are, just as much. They, just as good. I believe that the moment your child starts to talk, you can start forming certain things. You can start with boundaries, stranger danger, and then, of course, move up afterwards. So yes, I do speak to younger children. In schools, the youngest I ever spoke to was in 6th grade.
But do you go into different boroughs, like the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens,
We
Brooklyn?
in all 5 boroughs and Westchester, Mount Vernon, Westchester, or Mount Vernon, New York. Yes, we are. Thank you for asking.
So you speak in high schools, middle schools, and colleges?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I just jumped on this panel. My name is Thomas Essler. I'm director of storytelling and prevention programs for Saving Jane, and I want to address your question a little bit more. I know a lot of us are asking, what can we do about this horrific crime that's really sweeping the world, but is making this horrible impact on Brooklyn? That's certainly a question I'm sure we have all asked, but at Saving Jane we asked it, and I know you're asking. And what we decided to do, or what we heard from experts, is that one of the best ways of protecting children is to educate them. And an educated child is so much safer when a child understands that they're about to be played, or that they're, you know, in the presence of some kind of recruitment conversation. They know to back away. And even predators say that, you know, we can't exploit educated kids. As soon as a kid begins to resist, we'll back off because we know it could be trouble for us. Some of them feel that way. Anyway, so what Saving Jane has done is we've created a comic book with the help of federal law enforcement and educators and child psychiatrists and survivors that educate young people about human trafficking and give them proven tools to protect themselves. We take this around to schools, as you were asking, libraries, homeless shelters, YMCAs, other community centers, and faith communities, and really empower kids to be at the front lines of their own protection. You know, I just came from a workshop that I did for second graders, and I asked them, how many of you have your own phone? And about half of them, this was a really conservative community in Brooklyn, about half of them raised their hands. And then I said, how many of you have your own social media accounts? And more than half of the kids raised their hands. And then I asked, how many of you have ever read a post saying, hey, how'd you like to make some money? And all the kids that had social media accounts raised their hands, and this is a very common introduction to a recruitment conversation by a trafficker. Not all those posts are from traffickers, but that's very common. Now, never before have traffickers had such access to so many children because of the internet and because of social media. Traffickers can initiate maybe 1,000 recruitment conversations every day. Our goal, and the goal of our workshops and our comic books, is to reach kids before they're victimized and equip them with tools that they'll be able to use the rest of their lives. How to recognize a recruitment conversation, or the way they like to say, how do I know when I'm being played? How to powerfully and effectively deal with a predator or trafficker, and who they can go to for help if they get into trouble. We feel these are the 3 skills that are incredibly important when teaching young people. Get up here. You're the important one in this room. You really are. What is your question?
How can you get one of those comic books?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. You know, the really, our reason for being is, first of all, come up to me. If any of you want to bring this curriculum into your school or your church or your community center, please come up to me or my outreach director, Rachel, and we can help get you this curriculum. That's our reason for being. Our reason, Saving Jane's reason for being, is to get this comic book into the hands of young people. Recently a young woman wrote to me and said something like that, because of you, I now can live without fear. I now can recognize what a recruitment conversation is, and I now know it's okay for me to defend myself and fight for myself. I tell you what, I think one of the most important things we can do is educate our kids, and it turns out that experts say, that this comic book, we had no idea, has become an incredible educational tool. I go into schools, kids find out there's a comic book workshop, and they talk their way out of their regular classes in order to come to this workshop. And they absorb it because it's a story. It's not like a lesson or anything. It's an entertainment resource for them, and they absorb it. It's part of a story. There are characters that they like and identify with. It's like a Nancy Drew mystery. There's this crime, there's this mystery involved and this crime involved, and they get sucked into it, and they just, when I ask a question afterwards, they recite verbatim from the comic book as if they've absorbed it all the comic books. So anyway, we think this is a very powerful.
I want to get to the other questions.
Yeah, this is a very powerful way to safeguard your kids, and please talk to me if you'd like to.
Good evening, all. My name is Monique Thomas. I work for NYPD School Safety. I work in the Headquarters School Safety Division, Long Island, Queens, in operations. And I'm also a single parent of two. One, my daughter, she is a victim of sex trafficking since 14 to 18. I've been dealing, with assisting and advocating for her from that length of time, while also working my job. It was very difficult. It wasn't easy, but it was an extreme, process, and to deal with your child, that's going through that situation. It was a blessing that I was able to have the strength and the training from NYPD, in order for me to locate my own daughter. It was hard, and I was able to gather my own information. Come to find out, she got the information from Backpage when she was 14. I had no clue. I'm busy working, so forth. But I noticed some signs when Grandma, she's here. My mom is over here. But she helped me. She was every step of the way, my supporter, and my family. My aunt is sitting here also. It was very shocking situation, how she just started leaving the house, taking my shoes, and my mom is telling me these patterns while I'm at work. She's calling me, and I'm like, Mom, I'm at work. What's going on? She's like, oh, she's leaving the house and so forth. So I jumped into it, and I found out, that she was being, strayed away from home. I had did numerous missing reports, I think about over 15. For the 6-3 precinct from my area. First it was the 6-3, and then I think it was the 6, I forgot the other precinct over there, 6-9, I think. But it was something. But she was able to come back home for the fact of my strength. I try to get assistance and help for her, asking her father. Her father says, oh, well, you know what to do. You work for the police department. So it was all left in my corner. And I had to really physically do all the footwork. So I gathered all the information that I could. Happened so she had my phone a couple of times while at home, and she was on Facebook, and the people that she was communicating with, the pimps and so forth, it happened to be on Facebook. And I was able to gather all the information. I did my own investigation. And I was sitting there thinking at home like, oh my God, I'm about to go and risk my life, and go out there and go save her myself. Just so happened, I went to the precinct, made the report and everything, that I found my daughter. I know where she's located in Baychester in the Bronx. That's where they had her at, in a hotel. And, I was saying, oh, I'm about to risk my life and go over there. But just so happened, the Vice Squad, they stepped in. They assist with me in my daughter's case, and they were able to arrest him and everything. He served time.
Great.
And she came a long way, and still to this day, the detective, Chavez, she from the 45th Precinct in the Bronx, she's still, in our lives and assisting every chance that the perp was getting in contact with my daughter. My daughter knew to call her and let her know, and then boom, he was arrested again. Every chance. So, it was grateful, and then I was also like, okay, I need to get her back on track with her life, with school and so forth. So I advocated for her. I got her the educational, assistance that she needed. She had to get a school transfer because she wasn't comfortable. got that done. She went to Brooklyn College Academy, and then she was transferred to Brooklyn Democracy,
Great.
which she actually graduated from high school last year
Woo.
in June. So she's a great survivor, and with me in her corner and family and, you know, great supporters and even bosses from my job, they all helped and assist my situation. Yes. And I also put my promotion on the back burner, you know, to become an officer, to assist my daughter. But, you know, everything, you know, happens first with family. So family is most important. Yeah. So in that matter, what it is now, she's graduated, and I'm still advocating for her. She wants to go to college. She wants to go to a way college or some form. But now it's so difficult for her to go to college because it's like she really doesn't have further assistance. She's 20 now, and she's looking to find ways on what college she can go to. You know, she needs some help with, you know, like, you know, getting in there, you know, and getting some, you know, maybe getting into a dorm or something, maybe. Because I'm like, I don't know, you know, I don't have the fundings. I'm a single parent. I just make minimum basic salary. So I'm trying to do the best I can, but I would like, you know, to know more information if it's out there for college.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But I just want to say thank you. Because, you know, support is really hard to come by. After you have been victimized, you don't come back the same. You're not the same person when you get back home. And especially if you have a lot of sibling rivalry in the home and, you know, somebody to tear you down every time. But to get all of that support from you, grandma, and aunt, that's amazing. It's amazing, and I'm so happy. So happy you supported her. There's a lot of victim shaming afterwards that typically happens, so I'm really grateful for that. We do have a couple of opportunities that we'll be able to assist with. Fallon, George, towards the end, we can give you a card. We are partnered with an amazing organization called 100, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. They do a lot of HBCUs, and it sounds like, you know, she's ready to go away and do something big with her life, and I will definitely connect you guys. Yeah.
Also, there's a group that I'm a part of. I sit on the board. It's in Queens. It's called Who Can Go to College Committee. It's ran by Dorita Wiggins, and I would definitely give you direct contact for them. And not only just they help them to be able to get into college, but they make sure and watch them through the whole entire time they're in college. And it's a great, and they use young people that they send to different colleges as testimonies to get other young people, so they're not just up there by themselves. So it's everybody goes through this program that can connect to other young people, so you can have a partner. You're not just going up there and just getting lost and you don't know what's going on, and you're trying to get, you know, acquainted to the things that's out of town. So that is definitely something that we can connect you with as well.
We're also having an HBCU fair on February 10th. So we're gonna have representatives from a few HBCUs and also have like a conversation about the first year of college and what that looks like. And we're definitely gonna have scholarship resources there as well, so definitely attend.
That's awesome. All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paige Best Hardy. I'm a family leadership coordinator in District 23, Ocean Hill Grounds.
Yes.
So this event was so important to my school community because many parents, when we say, why aren't the schools doing this with the curriculum? Well, I'd like to look and say, you know, you can have people be aware of it and teach your children, because it's hard enough just getting parents to be open to talk with their children about sex. You'd be surprised how many parents opt out of that conversation occurring with their child. And it doesn't, you know, squelch the child's curiosity. So with that being said, my job is to work with families. So if somebody, you know, it's like listening about the information, and you shared a lot of positive apps. If those things can just be recorded where parents knew. I can give them a list. We can bring people to come in to educate them about what human trafficking is, what it looks like, how to protect your child, what your child should know, what you should know. That will help. And it's not just speaking to parents, but you're also speaking with school staff, district staff, that can continue to keep and get the word out there, because that is extremely important. I can't begin to tell parents. I can look, and say, well, as a parent, I had 2 daughters and a son, and everything they did, I'm there. Job or no job, I'm there. I'm there with them. If no sleepovers, but your friends are welcome to sleep over here because there are no men in my house. Okay, and they're safe. And parents had no problem. So my house was the house where children were welcome to come, but you couldn't come and don't let me see you there during school hours, because that's a problem. And so when you are a parent and you sit down and you begin to teach your children early enough about those boundaries. And, old school, we didn't have cell phones back in the day. My father's thing was make certain you take down the license plate numbers, write it down, stick it in your shoe, and make certain somebody on the outside know before you get into the cab. Dad was like that. Mom was like, okay, listen, you go out, and you have some drink. If you leave it, don't go back to it. So your parents were able to teach you. And likewise, I teach my children. So, but if your parents don't know, and if they can't teach you, then you don't know. But it's up to somebody to teach somebody. And it's important that the information come to the place where we can reach at least 7,747 students.
That's right.
And that's the district office. We have a parent resource center. Our families are open to learning more, and they're putting the information out there. They're trying to do self-teaching, but it's important to hear from somebody who experienced it. It's important to know what are the signs. How do we know? How can we recognize it within our own children? Sometimes we just think kids got attitudes because they're going through that hormonal imbalance in their lives, not realizing there is maybe something deeper going on. Yes. So whatever information you have, I'll be more than happy to get it. Whatever books you have, give us the listing, and maybe we can order it and see that it gets into the hands of those who need it the most.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
That is totally important.
Just in the interest of time, you're going to be the last question/comment.
And I'm going to be most brief.
Not a problem.
One of the things that we are always dealing with is proliferation of ignorance, or ignorance. But I come tonight to say, I spoke with a man some years ago. I don't know his name, so don't try to interrogate me. But this man was a highly classified officer in the Army. And he said it was the generals and those of the higher ranks that were doing the sex trafficking and the human trafficking. And that's why we never were able to track it, because there was always a cover-up. And because he was classified, he heard all the conversations. And we never think about, where does this originate? I'm an educator, and I tell you, this is a very difficult thing to train parents. Parents need to be trained because they don't have any sense of discipline. We're dealing with AI, we're dealing with cyberspace, we're dealing with social media, and we're watching television that's mindless.
Come on.
Video games.
So it's very easy for our children to get locked into mindlessness and this sexuality. And so we have a lot of work to do, and they're not being educated. And the parents come in, and they're giving teachers and the principals a hard way to go. Some of the principals don't have the skill base that they should have. So we see it's a serious problem. But we should not forget where this human trafficking is coming from, and I've been doing this many, many years. But we can't stop it. And the reason we can't stop it because people at the top are able to fudge and get away with it. And so we're not clear about what's happening. And then until we deal with where is this coming from, we can't stop it. That's all I have to say.
One of the things, I'm sorry, yeah, you can clap for her. We can clap for you now. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I think Monique has something. But one of the things in terms of deterrent we have to be able to deal with, we have too many places in our city where we know that prostitution and human trafficking happens. We know here in Brooklyn that in East New York, behind White Castle, prostitution happens. We know that on Fulton and Fort Greene and Vanderbilt Park and other areas, prostitution and human trafficking happens. We know that in the Bronx and Gun Hill Road and Baychester, Fordham Road, we know that happens. We know in Harlem on 125th Street, it happens. We know in Staten Island, it happens. So in the police department, sorry, Vinny, the police department knows that it happens. Yeah. So they can do but so much because they'll make the arrest, but the district attorney won't prosecute. And because under this new bail reform, the police officers are scared to even make an arrest, to do anything. But we are joining with Freedom Youth LLC with Monique to start an operation called Operation Light 'em Up. And basically what that is an operation. Now, you know how we have crime in our neighborhood. You see these big spider lamps that the police department puts in our community, and they put there and it leaves there and it stays there until the crime goes down. Well, we want those lamps and those lights in East New York. We want them in Harlem. We want them in Baychester. We want them in the Bronx and Staten Island, because it's too long that you shouldn't be known by an area, because it shouldn't be known by an area that is made by prostitution, and nothing has been done to be able to deter our kids and our young people and our women for prostitution and human trafficking. So we're going to start that campaign in terms of putting these lights in that, and it's going to stay on because we know Friday and Saturday and at night, if you drive in these areas, it's like 42nd Street. Where the lights are flashing, and so we're going to be able to continue to do that, as well as dealing with the education component as well, both of those campaigns, because we have to do something. Lastly, on March 8th, everybody say March 8th.
March 8th.
That is International Women's Day. And we are organizing one of the biggest marches right here in Brooklyn to deal with human trafficking.
Yes.
We are starting from Prospect Park, which is Grand Market Plaza, and we'll be ending at the Shirley Chisholm Building, which is 55 Hanson Place. We have unions, UFT, DC 37, the Nurses Union that are supporting in conversation, but we are going to be able to deal with this issue after January, because something has to be done. And we're not stopping just because it's the month. So we want to make sure that we send a clear message to all those elected officials, so we want to see those elected officials that say they care and don't just come around during election time and when they're running for office, but really be there for the people and for our brothers and sisters and individuals who are dealing with this issue that we face every day.
Yes, absolutely.
The UN concerning that issue. So,
yes.
Wonderful.
So I'm glad you mentioned it. I forgot that I could have mentioned it when I was up here.
Wonderful.
So I would like to thank everyone for coming. Special thank you to our panelists, all of you that attended and shared your information. Tonight, I just want to make sure that everyone is taking the information that was shared. You're turning it from just awareness to action to change. And I just want to thank all of you for coming and being present and asking all of your questions.
Thank you for having us.
So for for those of you that don't know, there is an event that's happening downstairs. I know, how could you not know? They have food and music, but feel free. Also, if you want to